start out with a very interesting little tidbit. I had never heard this story. And if I'm 100% honest with you, I'm not even familiar with all of the key players. But there's some interesting details just in this first story that it's like, you people will just sidle up to anybody who might slip a few dollars into your palm. You know, you don't have any morals. You don't have any code by which you live. Your code is the almighty dollar. All right, so Tom Bowers sets the scene for this chapter 37 called Netflix by telling us about Harry and Meghan going out to Tom Barrack's 1,200-acre mountain ranch near Santa Barbara to meet this controversial father of six and have a little movie night. Tom Barrack is an enormous Trump-supporting billionaire. I only include that fact because Harry and Meghan have been so profoundly anti-Trump, and they make it seem like it's some kind of moral crime to associate any of your dealings with anybody who would have anything to do with him, that it's contrary to their own political ethos to associate with this person who is a known Trump supporter, who controlled a multi-billion-dollar property empire linked to Arab investors. That has problems for Meghan because she has said in the past that she's got problems with the Middle Eastern nations who are homophobic and anti-pride and all this. She's got real problems with those people. She's got real problems with Trump. But she's going to cozy up to Tom Barrack because he's a millionaire. And Oprah is actually the one who was in charge of introductions here. So even Oprah really she doesn't really care. It's just, how do we grease the deal? How do we make the deal happen? You know? It's just annoying. It's just annoying to find out how often these people say one thing out of one side of their mouth and do another. And then I'm annoyed at myself for being annoyed. It's like, cheer. Are you so slow to learn? Of course that's what these people are doing. None of these people are genuine. None of these people are truth tellers. But anyway, the whole reason that they went over to this guy's house where they were going to have a little shindig and sit around the TV and watch the latest episodes of The Crown. This is wild. This is crazy. Can you imagine being this Tom Barrack and being like, hey, you guys want to come over to my 1,200-acre ranch and we can like pop some popcorn and watch The Crown? You into that, Prince Harry? And Harry's over there like, yeah, sounds great. He can't wait to go and malign his family to somebody else. Apparently, as they were sitting there watching episode after episode, Harry's over there crunching his popcorn being like, yeah, well, it's actually way worse than that. It's way worse than that. You know, this is inaccurate, but only to the extent that it's not as bad as it. This is not portraying how bad it actually is. It's actually 1,000 times worse. You know, and it's like over and over and over again, like anytime he could point out the inaccuracies of it, to the extent that it wasn't portraying the devastation to each individual properly, he was over there. He had this to say. He had that to say. And the last episodes were about his personal family, like his mother and his father. If I'm remembering this timeline correctly, at the time when they were watching this, yeah, it was his own family. Wild, wild stuff to be introduced to somebody and then at their 1,200-acre estate and y'all are sitting around watching a dramatization about your mom and dad at the first introduction when you meet this person. Can you imagine going over to somebody's house, you've never met them before, and then y'all are going to watch a show that depicts the complete and total destruction of your parents' marriage, their many affairs, their fights, the many egregious ways in which they both conducted themselves, and this is your introduction to this person? This is a crazy world that these people live in. And no wonder Harry is discombobulated. These are not normal circumstances that our minds, our hearts, our emotions could properly function through all of this crazy and come out 100% stellar on the other side. This is wild to sit down and watch a show about your family with a billionaire. You're trying to grease a deal with this person. But first, let's all ingest a whole bunch of drama from my family. And then we can like talk about how you and I can maybe have a deal. I mean, that's weird. Now, it's not lost on you or I that this is a strange meeting of the minds. But it's even more strange because while Harry and Meghan are cozying up to Tom Barrack, he was just about to be incriminated on serious criminal charges. So not only are they kicking aside every one of their political sensibilities to become friends with this guy, not only is it a weird setting that this guy would invite them over and then be like, hey, Harry, let's watch about your dysfunctional family in this Netflix series, but this guy's about to be indicted in a criminal prosecution. Why are Harry and Meghan associating with this person? I don't understand it. Do you understand it? It doesn't matter to them. I just need a little bit of that pie. I just need a little bit of that $1 billion. Harry sitting there, maligning his family, enjoying ripping apart every scene to give more details about how it really was to these strangers. He doesn't know this guy from Adam. He's just sitting there being ugly, being rude, being mean, throwing out this red meat to somebody who has no business knowing any of that. Harry's just sitting there doing all this because what he's learned is to be vulnerable is the highest currency in Hollywood. And by vulnerable, I mean overshare and tell people things that they have no business knowing. But that's the part that he plays in this whole scheme. That's the part he's been assigned. Okay, Harry, in order to keep us relevant, you're going to have to keep dishing on your family. You're going to have to keep explaining and re-explaining how terrible your people are. And we don't need you for anything else. When we're not using you, you can go outside and juggle with your little balls. But when we need you, be ready to complain, malign, overshare, completely and totally rip apart the privacy of your family. Just be ready to do that at any moment. So he came ready. He knew the script. They're sitting there watching. He's over there. It's much worse than that. Living among Hollywood celebrities had undermined Harry's understanding of discretion and loyalty to his family. His remarks reflected the Sussexes' mission. First, to extract revenge against the royal family, and second, to fashion their brand. To stay in the spotlight and earn millions of dollars, the Sussexes sought maximum publicity. The normal understanding of privacy was disregarded. Right, because as we've said many a time, their version of privacy means I can tell the most intimate details of my life, including Meghan's bathroom habits while she was in Africa. But you better not decide to talk about me. I can talk about me all I want. I could talk about my miscarriage at New York Times. We can expose all of Harry's mental illness. But it's when we say. And if I tell you all about my terrible, horrible mental illness and my miscarriage and all of this, you're not allowed to write any commenting pieces on that. Yes, I know I offered these stories up into the public conversation, but you're not allowed to say you're not allowed to comment back about it. You're not allowed to add to the conversation. This is a one-way conversation here. I tell you, you accept and shut up. Soon after their visit to the barracks, Harry was driven around Los Angeles on an open-air bus with James Corden and a camera crew. The British star of the play One Man, Two Governors was filmed serving tea and biscuits to the prince, who in turn sucked up to the comedian's pranks and flattery. The interview Corden's producer would reveal was the result of Harry pestering the star to appear on his show. Now, you remember James Corden was invited to their wedding against all odds. Why was that guy invited? And why Harry would want so desperately to, knit his rising star to that of James Corden, I'll never know. That little goon is just, I don't even understand how he got so famous. He's not that funny. Is he even funny at all? I don't know. Every time I see him, he's just kind of acting goofy and, just this roly-poly little funny weirdo. And it's probably right on Harry's level of humor. That's probably why he so desperately wanted to hang out with James Corden. But that whole little interview was so awkward. I remember seeing little clips and snippets of it at the time and just being like, wait, why are you doing this, Harry? This is weird. This is odd. And the conversation wasn't really all that interesting. So they had to make up for the lapse in decent conversation with a bunch of tomfoolery and a bunch of filler bits. Anyway, in the course of their conversation, they are talking about The Crown. And Harry, not but 2 nights before, had been over there watching it and dissecting it for a bunch of strangers. And Harry says that he thought that the Netflix show was fantastic, that there wasn't any problems with this show. Despite the Crown being branded as a hatchet job on his parents, Harry told Corden with self-pity, "I'm way more comfortable with the Crown than I am seeing the stories written about my family, or my wife, or myself." He added, "Of course, it's not strictly accurate, but loosely, it gives you a rough idea about that lifestyle, the pressures of putting duty and service above family and everything else, and what can come from that." Okay, Harry. Makes perfect sense why you'd be praising the Crown up and down. Because you're working for Netflix. And that's what everybody said. They're like, oh, this is so interesting. Because Harry is constantly talking about how the media and TV and all of this won't give him or his family or his people a break. Yet when you have a show that's blatantly taking the names of his family, the incidents loosely that have happened to them, and then like profiting off of it enormously, yet he has no problem with that. Could it be because you're employed by the same people who are maligning your family in the series? Look, as somebody who loves the Crown, may it never go off the air. But still, for Harry, this is just another hypocritical statement. Oh, we're only 2 pages into this chapter, and it's been hypocrisy right, left, and center. I don't know why I'm surprised. I don't even hardly know why I'm commenting on it. Do I expect a different kind of personality trait to appear here? Of course not. Harry was untroubled that the Corden interview was broadcast on February 2021 at the same night as Prince Philip was in the hospital for his 13th day. Same day, the Queen's coming out begging people to please be vaccinated against COVID, which was the line everybody was using at the time. That was, safety first. And for Harry to have gone out and done this little hokey pokey stupidity with James Corden, tackling his vulnerability, once again tackling how the media has always maligned him, once again dealing with all of his same things. He's only got like 2 songs he can sing. Here his family, his grandparents, beloved grandparents, are suffering. His grandmother's trying to carry the weight on her 94-year-old shoulders. Grandfather's in the hospital for days. I mean, he's coming up on 2 solid weeks in the hospital. But Harry wants to go over there and eat tea and biscuits with James Corden on the top of a bus. In his bid for publicity, Harry appeared to ignore his grandparents' grief. Breaking custom, he also disclosed that the Queen gave Archie a waffle maker for Christmas. Then suddenly, Harry decides that the only way to keep the eyes on him is to just humiliate himself. That's the only way here. So he announces that, "I actually am dying for a pee." Harry was filmed telling the owners of a Bel Air house that he needed to use their bathroom and could he please come in. And they said that he could come in and use their bathroom. This is the content that James Corden has for us? This is the content that Harry was agreeing to? Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's have me acting like a toddler that can't hold it and knocking on random doors in Bel Air begging to use the restroom and just whiz all over the place. Self-humiliation had become an occasional essential ingredient in the Sussexes' search for publicity. Even Archwell's first podcast for Spotify relied on coaxing 19-month-old Archie to appear. "You can speak into it," Harry urged his son, pointing at the microphone. "Archie, is it fun?" asked Meghan a mite desperately. "Fun," Archie replied. "After me. Ready?" Harry commanded his son. "Say, Happy New Year!" prompting nervous laughter from the couple.
Yes, Archie's so cute, right?
The year of their Spotify podcast featured 13 guests, invited by Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, to speak about the power of connection. Okay, am I mixing this up here? Is this the same podcast that Meghan had? The Archetypes podcast? Was Harry was initially supposed to be part of that? Because, I don't think we ever saw him. Maybe in that first initial episode when they're using their child once again to draw in the listeners. But after that, did we ever see that guy? The radio station was billed for people to, quote, share their vulnerabilities within that safe space. Among the helpless was Elton John. He chose to confess that he was an alcoholic. And he wouldn't have survived COVID if it hadn't been for Zoom so that he could, make his AA meetings. Okay, but this whole statement here, let's come onto our podcast so you can share your vulnerabilities within a safe space. What are you talking about? How is it a safe space when you're inviting the entire world in to listen at their discretion, whenever? That's not a safe space. That's the very antithesis of a safe space. They don't care. Whatever they need to tell people to get their butts in the seats. More confessions flowed. To capture public attention, the Sussexes relied on self-exposure, including themselves. Meghan's pregnancy featured as a celebration of her importance. So once she's told everybody she's pregnant, she's going to need to come out with some pregnancy announcement photos. Because you can't have a baby unless you've had your pregnancy photos. So Mason Harriman, a Nigerian-born photographer, educated at Bradfield, a minor English public school, and known for his support of the Black Lives Matter movement, was hired for the shoot. The result was spectacular. Harriman's black and white portrait showed Meghan lying on the ground under a willow tree with her head on Harry's lap. Her right arm was resting on their baby bump. Guaranteed to appear on front pages across the world, Harriman shot the photo of the free spirits with an iPad from London. I don't understand that misplaced modifier in this sentence. Was the iPad from London, or was he taking pictures of them from London with an iPad? I'm sorry, I don't understand that sentence. Regardless, I'm not going to belabor the point. He had a lot to say about that picture, specifically the tree of life behind them. Listen to this, y'all. With the tree of life behind them, he wrote, and the garden representing fertility, life, and moving forward, they didn't need any direction because they are and always have been waltzing through life together as absolute soulmates. The tree of life behind them, It's the Garden of Eden, is it? There's a snake in that garden, too. Anyway, it's an interesting note that this willow tree that represents so much behind them, this tree of life, this one that they decided to take their picture in front of, that tree was photoshopped in later by Harriman while he was in London. So, all of this over-romanticizing of the picture and the willow tree and the tree of life and the fertility and all this, a fabrication, just like everything else. It's such a microcosm of the extent of who they really are as people. Let's put this thing forward. Let's put this picture forward. Act like it's just this sort of seamless thing that fell haphazardly together in this most spectacular way. We just stumbled out into the garden, waltzed our soulmate selves in. We fell to the ground, my head in Harry's lap, willow tree behind. He snapped a couple of pictures on his iPad, and voila, Here we are, barefoot, pregnant in the garden, just living the life of Adam and Eve had they not eaten a bite of that apple. But, of course, it was never that simple. They probably needed an enormous direction, and then he ended up having to Photoshop the picture and put a tree in the background and sort of, fix it up once he got back to London. It's just so typical. All right, well, anyway. Soon after the shoot, Harriman was appointed the chairman of London's South Bank Centre, one of the city's largest arts and music complexes, of course. I wonder if he still has that job, because it seems like so many people who climbed up the ladder on Harry and Meghan's backs are sliding down rapidly. The rest of the world was beginning to be filled with critics. Okay, not everybody was over there clasping their hands to their chest in ecstasy. Publicity-shy woman tells 7.67 billion people, "I'm pregnant," was the Daily Star's headline over the photograph. The newspaper echoed Piers Morgan's quip. They quit the country for privacy, and they've hardly shut up since. It's all complete hogwash. Meghan supporters agreed with her own definition of privacy. I think everyone has a basic right to privacy. We're not talking about anything that anybody else wouldn't expect. It's about boundaries, respect. Meghan represented a powerful strand of opinion among influencers. So we've got, some real mixed reactions to this photograph. Look, if you want to announce your pregnancy, by all means, no one's saying you can't. But it's this demand that everybody praise you for being pregnant. Like there's not like billions of women who aren't pregnant right now. She acts like she and Harry have invented the idea of pregnancy. The way she cradles her baby bumps, the way she's constantly flicking her coat open, the way she wants to highlight it every time, like, look what I just did. Have you ever heard tell? It's like, yeah, well, whatever.